Hello and welcome to Dell's Gaming, and this is from the Depths Designer, where in this particular episode I am going to go through some of the aspects of detection, and more specifically stealth, or not being seen, shall we say. Now this is going to be focusing mainly on surface and aircraft rather than submarines. Submarines I'll do in a separate element, because that's it's got a number of other issues, but let's leave that for the moment. Okay, so a couple of first things is, what do we mean by stealth? Because this was triggered for me by a forum post where someone was asking about stealth, how to make a stealthy ship. But also I was looking around ships and someone posted actually a link to one they created, and I was just trying to think, well, for my small UAVs it would be nice to have some which are stealthy in some ways, and I've always wanted to build a stealth bomber of some description, which I'll do in a separate video. So first of all, before we can go down any of that, we've got to know, what does it mean to have detection? Right, so first of all, we will have a look. I'm going to bring up the UI so I can see what I'm doing. So first of all, we got the detection equipment, as you can see here. They're separated into two types. One is detectors and trackers. Now detectors first detect a target, and you've got visual cameras, radar, reflective detectors and infrared. Now some of it's reasonably self-explanatory. There's sonar, which I won't go into. We'll look at those when we go into subs. But visual basically is just basically a high resolution camera, looks for things and spots it. Only tracks things above water. Reasonably obvious. All of these are above water only detectors. Next is the infrared here. I would say this is not any particular order, but infrared works by tracking hot things basically. So your infrared signature. Your radar sends out a radar pulse and gets a radar return and basically spots things that the radar sees, obviously. And the retroreflective detector is a little strange one, in that what it does is it will go out and detect cameras. So if someone's got a camera, this will detect it, which is an interesting concept. Got anything else? The only last one we've got is a wireless snooper, which detects vehicles if they are emitting some sort of radio wave. It's not accurate, but it will detect a ship. Now once they're detected, they passed over to these trackers. So trackers have a different function. So trackers give like targeting information effectively to your weapons. Your detectors will just say, well, there's a ship out there somewhere in that direction, go and look for it, but won't really give very good accuracy. Their range is not great as well. I will look in the AI detectors, and you can see here, if you go down there, there's a couple of areas we need to look at. One is the angular error, which is a target to the target, the range error, which is obviously the range to the target, and the instrument has a relative detection range of 0.5, so it means it's not that great a range as such, but it works in all directions. Then the other, as we go down, we'll find there's other cameras and the tracking ones which give more information. They're either, for instance, this one has a tighter angle and works at a range of 1, so it's going to work at a longer range than the 360 camera, and then going down to the gimbal, which has a range of 2 and even tighter, going all the way to the telescopic, which really is actually about the same, these two. The other change is that for each of those that I just talked about, we talked about the camera, you'll notice that the range error is 12.5, pretty bad, angular error 0.8. If we look at the radar has an angular error of 2, which is pretty poor, but a range error of 0.4, which is very good. Infrared camera is about the same as the normal camera but works using the infrared. So each of these has a plus and minus when it comes to targeting. So in most cases you would have a camera to give you the bearing tracking and a radar to give you the range. So most systems that I've seen and I would create, I generally use those two. The infrared one assumes they have an infrared signature, so I don't tend to use that one, but potentially could be used. But most of the time radar gimbal, camera gimbal are the two most commonly used trackers and detectors. So basically you first of all detect it, then you track it. This all assumes one thing, which is that you have your options set to not have perfect detection. If we go into options, under the let's just go under here, under config, you'll see there's automatic detection accuracy. Now the default is actually to have it at 0.1, and you can have it all the way up to 1, which means, to be honest, you don't need any detectors because everything's 100% perfect, which is a bit silly really. I have this at 0 because I like to make sure that everything has to have a detector and everything has to work using detections, and I that's my favourite. The default netter settings is 0.1, which I think most people will work with, but for this and also my own settings I have it at 0. So the next bit of setup we just need to do is make sure that you have set, if I come off of build mode, down in the bottom toolbar, just at the bottom of my screen, I've got number 9 is set as a detection view, and that allows me to look at objects and see how far away this would be detected. So this platform, as an example, under visual detection has a 9,000 meter detection over there, and then I click the button once and heat is 109, which isn't too bad actually. And we go down, radar 900 meters, sonar 471 by the looks of that, and then it shows all my equipment, where my equipment is pointing and that they are working. So to bring that up, we need to then go into the character sheet and go under the avatar items and then pull the detection viewer into one of your areas. Click it once, and where do you want it? So I'll put it back on number 9 because that's where I like it, and then that would give you this ability to look at how detectable a particular object or vehicle is. So next, how do we make something detectable or not? Now for this, what I'm going to do is I've made some sort of standard size and shape which we're going to reuse through most of the testing, just to show what can be done with a particular shape and what changes it. So first of all, we've got this blue shape. So if we look under what is visible, you can see visible 2500, 10,000, oops, let's point at the right ship, 2500 and 895. And under heat 101 because it's got no heat, so that's going to be the same, and radar 85 and 30. So you can see for the radar specifically, you've got 85 at the front and 30 to the rear, and that's all about what type of material and the angles, etc. So 85 meters. Okay, metal block. Immediately you can see that that angle, that detection range has gone up to 142. From 85 up to 142 and 50 at the side. So metal, very easy to see with radar. Just to show visibility, exactly the same. All of these have exactly the same visibility. Visibility is not changed by the materials. The only thing that is changed is radar. Next one, alloy blocks, 57 and 20. So that's a lot better than metal, and it's a lot better than wood. So alloy is very radar absorbent. Then finally, rubber blocks. Now, yep, So we've got rubber blocks. This is purely made of rubber blocks, 28 and 10. So this is the most radar absorbent material. Visibly, exactly the same. There's no difference to visibility. Heat, exactly the same. These have no heat signature anyway, but it's exactly the same. So material wise, rubber is really good and alloy is really good. Anything else, I've tested glass, and I think glass is somewhere like metal or wood, somewhere around that. Anything else is between or at metal and wood. But if you're looking for something which is stealthy for radar, then these two seem to be the best options. So next, shapes. Well, these are all flat surfaces. Now this is where the system doesn't really apply to normality, but we'll go through that. What if you give an angle to the blocks rather than just using flat 4-meter blocks? So here I've done it using slope, so the front of it is slope. Now the rear is 57 meters, which is the same as that, and the front is still 57 meters, even though we've used lots of angles. In actual fact, the side 28 meters is actually gone up a little bit on this. Oh no, it's 28 meters. Is that the same? Let me just double check. It has actually gone up because I've gone forward a little bit and backward a little bit. It's actually easier to see, and because it's now slightly wider, it's also longer range visibly to be able to see. Okay, well, what if we angle it even more? So this is a very angled, again 57 meters, 57 meters. So we got wedges and 4-meter slopes pointing forwards, still no effect. What does have an effect is coating the areas in rubber. So here we've got 58 meters at the rear and the front is 40 meters. So it's, you know, reduced it from 57 to 40, so that's a reasonable reduction in radar cross section. Disadvantage of rubber: you've only got blocks. The only option you have, let me just bring up the right one here. The only option you have under blocks is the basic rubber block. There is no angled rubber blocks whatsoever. I would love to see some angled rubber blocks. So I can make it look a lot nicer, and it would be more aerodynamic. These are as well as aerodynamic as a brick, basically, because it's just a block. So that's going to be a big disadvantage to any aircraft, in that they're just going to be, well, it's just not going to be good. They're not going to have any speed, etc. They're just going to basically be slow because of the aerodynamics. You're not going to make a fast, stealthy aircraft. So it's still about the front cross section. So one thing you could do is change this shape, because getting the same amount of usable space but in a different package. So here I've made it slightly longer, and the wings are slightly, don't go out quite so much. We've got a 3 and a 2 rather than a 4 and a 4, and they're double the thickness. So it's got the same internal carry space, but has been shortened. So now frontal radar 31, rear without any rubber is 43, so it's still down a little bit. Side is 35, so that's gone up because it has got a wider cross section on the side, so it makes logical sense it would go up. So yeah, that's not too bad. Still, it's going to have a slightly less drag because it's got lower frontal area. So you would want to have the frontal, assuming that you want the most stealth when you're approaching an enemy, you want the front to have the maximum amount of stealth. This also has an effect if I come off of the build mode. If I go to visual, so visibility is 2100 versus 2600, so it did make a difference to the front visibility because it's got a smaller cross section basically. Downside, sideways 1200, 2100, so sideways it's now more viewable. So this is the minimum you're going to get really, and still have something which is of a useful shape. I think you could build something which is in that cross section to a degree, and just elongate it a little bit. But the material's not the end of it, because what you now also need to do, if you've got a craft, is you need to make it be able to detect other ships. So you'll want to be able to put on your own detectors. So how do they affect the detectability? Well, here we have a visual camera and a radar. Now these are both detectable, because if in your detectors you have a passive radar and the retro-reflective detector, they will detect these items. So it does make your vessel detectable by those, but they're low accuracy detection systems, and they're only detecting you, they're not tracking you. So yeah, it's potentially okay. They're also the least they add the least to detection ranges. So if I get to radar, so the front on this has gone to 38 and the rear is 36. So the radar was actually the most stealthy of the detection systems, and the camera was the most was the second most stealthiest, shall we say. Did try the other ones. All the others were higher. I think the highest one was the infrared camera 90 degree. I think was about the worst one you could get. If I put that one in, 46 and 38. And if we just put in, where are we, what else did I try? Oh yeah, I tried things. You could put in a 360 camera as an example if you wanted to. 81, very bad detectabilities on all of the 360s. You'd most probably say, okay, we only detect when we are going towards a target. The other obvious one is don't use any type of these first level of detectors, and just use sonar and missile and radar. Drop them behind the ship and let them do all the initial detecting. They haven't got a long range, but they would work. You could also, if you're willing to allow for wireless snooper, set your system to use intra-vehicle transmitter. So you then use the targeting from other ships. That's also a possibility. So next we have tracking. Once you have detected, either through your own onboard or sonar buoys or the intra-vehicle, you need to track the vessel. So we've got two trackers here, the camera and the radar. The camera has, as we said before, has a good bearing, and the radar has good range, depending on what is more important for your ship. And they give it 64 and 54. So the camera is the most stealthy. Compare that with 35. 35 is the base value if you had nothing at the side at all. So these are both very, well, not stealthy at all. They have significantly increased. If we I'll just show that. If I take that off and put back a rubber block, gone down to 40. So from 4 it's gone 40. If I just put it back again, to 54. It's quite a big increase for having this tracker on board. One other possible option is if you only need it, say, when you're going over a target, so you've got in close to the target, you could theoretically recess it below. It's going to have limited targeting ability, but that's a potential way to do it. So it's recessed and only looks downwards when you're above the target for that final targeting solution. That's a possibility. So tracking and targeting, these all take up quite a bit of they all reduce your stealth quite considerably. Next bit to look at would be defensives. So as part of defending yourself, you'd want to be able to detect munitions or lasers potentially. So normally we've got 31. At the back here I've got a passive radar, which would be handy for detecting radar guided missiles coming towards you, and it's gone up to 46, which is quite high compared to 31, so that's an extra over 50%. So a passive radar, quite high. But you could, as depending how you want it or where you put it, you could put that on the rear, so that only detects the missiles when they're trying to chase you, when you're flying away from them, rather than have them on the front. Other one, let's see, the munition warning system, which would obviously, which would help to track just general infrared missiles that are coming in. That's put the side up to 65 from your average of 35. That's very unstealthy, but it's not increased it tremendously. It may be worth putting that detector at the side than not having it at all. I haven't got anything on the front, and then on this side I just have a laser warner. A laser warner is 55, so not as bad as the munition systems. Okay, so we've done the tracking, detecting, tracking, some defensive systems. Now what about weapons? Because what's the point of having a ship if you haven't got weapons? So first of all, we're going to look at missile systems. Now these are internal missile systems. We've got small systems, so the front on each side I've put 2 systems on each side. So at the front, small ones, 33, so actually very stealthy, 31 to 33. That's not very much at all actually. On the side, 43, not too bad from a standard of 35. Still gone up a bit, but not horrendous. Then mediums, 33 and 43, so the same. It doesn't matter whether it's a medium or a small, they're about the same amount. Now I'll just use this one as an example. The other one is advanced cannons, and if I just put a let's just put something in, an advanced firing piece in each of those, just as a point of reference, and then we put a 1 meter mantlet. Doesn't matter which way it's facing at this moment. 80. Mantlets are very unstealthy. So, you know, gunships, I think, for stealth aircraft, not stealthy at all. 130, actually the mantlet's more stealthy than just having a firing piece. If you have the firing piece on its own with, let's just put a barrel on that, see if that makes an effect. 130 meters. Let's see if there's anything else, maybe nope, the barrel is not being affected. So yeah, without a mantlet at all, very bad. Let's try what mantlets we've got. So we tried the Omni. Let's try an Omni, see if that's any better. 80 meters, okay, it's better than just having the elevation. Let's try a free. I don't think I'm going to fit a free. We'll put a 3 there, 1 there, and 300. Yeah, that's not good. Let's just try the elevation one. Just turn it right. 2 elevation ones, which I use in my gunships. 178. So yeah. Anyway, guns. I don't think they're going to be ideal for a stealth ship. I think you're better off sticking with missiles. Finally, in this little section, to make sure I get into the right ships, is what if you don't have them pointing out. So this is, we've got external stores and recessed missiles in here, so we can compare the sides. So this is the external, and it's having an effect of 34 meters on the front and 35 on the rear. So that's the effect of those missiles, because they're gonna stick out, and the side is 46 meters. We'll compare that with 35 and 31. So yeah, actually very little effect head on, less than would be expected, less than having launchers sticking out the front. It's actually, oh no, actually 1 meter slightly more. Let's just check one thing, which would be the visibility. 2100, slightly more visible visually, but not a horrendous amount. Right, sideways 46, okay, not too bad. But the recessed missiles, so, and these are why what I've put in here is rear facing ones, so they would basically be ejected out the back, would be my idea. Here you could also put ejection blocks to eject them straight down, but I just thought you could just drop them straight behind, potentially. Side on 41 meters versus 43, so it is more stealthy, quite simply because you've got less profile on the side. You've got rubber, whereas on here these get in the way of the rubber blocks. So potentially I think that is a more stealthy way of storing your missiles than straight just hanging off of the rails, but it's close. Final part is propulsion and infrared. So we've got a number of options here. Now you've got two general options. There is a third option which I didn't actually set up on here, and maybe I should, and that would be propellers, but using jets. So we've got a single jet, which a single jet on its own has a thrust of about 4,500, and then you've got impulse. Now an impulse only has about a thrust of 1,300, so you would need 3 of them to get close to the 4,500, but in both cases these wouldn't be especially fast. Now as far as radar cross section goes, yeah, 925 versus 400. The jet, even though everywhere else is covered in rubber, the jet is not stealthy at all when it comes to radar, and visually it won't make a difference. 2-1, 2-1, yep. So it's purely, as far as radar is concerned, not very stealthy. If I just release it, I'm going to have to go and find it. There we go. It is going to be, let me just take it up, and there we go. Right, so in operation, obviously doesn't have an effect on the radar. Where it does have an effect, if I change over to heat and then go take the vehicle back again, that heat signature is going up. There's quite a heat signature coming, as you would imagine, from this vessel. Everywhere else is 120-ish, but the heat signature out the back is 1300 and going up. Now obviously this is going to have a big effect on infrared cameras, but also infrared missiles are going to be easier to latch onto this vessel because of that level of heat signature. There isn't a lot you could do about that, I don't think. It's just generally there's a lot of heat. This vessel as well is using just batteries and RTGs, because basically the if you put fuel engines in here or steam engines, that would be a lot of heat, as you can imagine. Let me come off of there. Let me just take that back. So this is the impulse version. So it's got 3, which means you're going to have less space. You're not being able to get as fast a vehicle as the jet engine, and you're going to need more power. These ion thrusters, the huge ones, take 90 power for 1300, whereas the jet engines 150 for 3 times. So you're going to need more power with these, so you'd have to spend some more on batteries, or you just simply have to go slower. But heat wise, no heat, we're nice and cold. Other advantage, these don't have a problem with upper atmosphere. This could theoretically go straight into space, which could be of benefit to the vehicle. So radar wise, they have a much lower radar signature. If I come off and then go on capture again, these don't have any AI to actually fly, so that's why it's not going anywhere. So radar signature 400. It's still got a large radar cross section. Now theoretically, depending on what you want to do, you could, I think, cover the rear a little bit in rubber, and that's brought that down to 69 meters, which is significantly better. You might want to put small ion thrusters in here as well, just so that you can get close to the power of the jet engines, but it's still significantly lower radar cross section than the huge jet. So yeah, potential. I think for myself, if I was building an aircraft, once I'm running away, I'm running away. I'm not as worried about the cross section. It's mainly when I'm coming in to do the drop. After that, to be honest, I want to be going fast so I can get away. I might even not be too worried about having a jet engine in here and just saying to hell with it, you know, get in fast with a very low cross section and then speed up afterwards. So what does this all mean for detection systems? Well, I've taken the sort of semi-final system we had with an impulse and all the other items and put it above this ship so it's locked in position rather than just flying around, and I've put a enemy simulator on here so we can turn that on. Let me just give it plenty of duration. So this is now an enemy ship effectively, and we can see now the detections from various vessels, how they detect it. So it's currently heading away from our ship, and we're about let's see, we're about 3,700 meters. So using the detection view, you can see the plots from the design, all those trackers and detectors, where it thinks the target actually is. We can see its detection ranges. So at the moment it's got its most unrailed radar stealthy heading, you know, towards the design platform. So it's the most easy to detect at this particular moment. We're going to be heading away further. If I just make sure it's all set up, yep. Back at the design platform, there's a lot of arrows here, but if we look at the actual detectors, we can see radar detection, can't detect it. The retroflective, no. Passive radar, no. This one has a 21%, so our 360 camera has a 20, is actually going down, 17, 16, it's going down, and that's at a range of approximately 4,000 meters. We're going down at 20% chance of detection. It was going up a little bit, maybe just turning slightly. The wireless snooper, there's no mainframes. Now the other bit we got is, we've got, because we're faced away, it's faced away from us, we've got the radar has a 10% chance of detecting it, and it's just gone out of its 10% detection chance or tracking chance, so that's not going to be adding any tracking information. We've also got here a, let's see, we've got an infrared camera, can't see it. This is the visual camera, tracking camera. I use the big one. The small one would be the same, and that has a 76%. This camera is very good at detection, and also the laser rangefinder I find here, no matter what the range is, it seems to detect once it's been targeted. It seems to pick it up quite nicely. At least we're getting range to a target. Nice, good detector this. So basically it looks like our visual cameras are not really being affected. Now you can look at what the actual error is. If we go in here, we can go for bearing error. It's still fairly dot on, but here range error, you can see it's hopping all over the place. If we say position error, we can see it's sometimes going 9, let's see 7. The position error 25 is popping up all over the place. So if you're trying to fire a gun at this, it's not going to have a very good positional error, or it's not going to be targeting very well actually on this, although the bearing is actually quite good. But that is partially because the only one that can aim at it is the visual camera, which has very good bearings but not very good range detection. So it means that any gun that's high velocity guns would potentially still be okay, because they're going to fire, it's more important they've got the bearing correct than the range. But anything that's lobbing a shell in would not be able to fire at this very accurately. Let's just see what happens if we turn it around so it's heading towards us. So the ship is now roughly heading back towards the ship. It's about 4,500, so it's in its most stealthy. So we've still got a 17% chance, and it's going up because it's coming towards us with the visual, and all the others are zeroed. Same with the tracking. The visual camera is at 50%, all the others, and the laser tracking is at 100%, but all the others are 0. For me, that means that the visual camera here is a little overpowered, I would say. It's almost, you might as well, it's almost, I wouldn't say perfect, but it's got very good detection ability. Now I was hoping that, what if we change the time of day? So if we go into environment and say we'll make it midnight instead, which it would be nice if that meant now that cameras didn't work. But we've got 40% chance there, going up to 43, around the 40%. Let's just compare that to perfect midday. So it does have an effect, but not that much. Well, let's see if it had an effect on the detectors. So we've got 16%. Let's go back there again. So we've got 16%. So it has about a 50% effect having the night time. Let's just see if weather has an effect as well. Now weather is having an effect on this more than the time of day. We can see the detection rate there has gone significantly down. We've actually gone into a not detection system, not detectable. None of the other systems are detecting us, and the this is still locked on. The laser actually has still got 100%, but this is down to 27%. So okay, that level of environment is good. Let's put it up to the stormiest it can possibly be, just for at night time, just to see the maximum possible effect that we'd have. So this is going to be rain, storms, snow, you name it, it's coming in now. So no detection on those. 10% on the visual, at a range of, what range have we got here? 4,000 meters. Laser's still 100%. I must admit, I would expect the laser to be affected a little bit more with all the rain, etc., because lasers do not like bad weather. Seriously don't like bad weather. They're worse than visual cameras in many respects. But interesting information. Weather does have an effect. Let's just bring that all back to normal. So all the weather's come back, and yep, we're back to 17% there, and this is up to about 70% at a range of 3,700. Okay, interesting about the weather. That was good. The next thing we'll just quickly test is with this type of detectability. How does it work with missiles? So first of all, let's send a what we got here. We have a infrared missile. We'll send some infrared missiles at the target and see if they will detect. Now these are just infrared with a 1 turn, and they'll put path view on. So at the moment it's not detected it. It's now detected it, but you can see it's not accurate, and our ship is not exactly moving very fast here, and it missed. So even without a flare, etc., it takes a long time for it to detect, and then was missing it, and that's when it's going head on. Let's try another one. It will be firing some more. We'll try an infrared with single turn infrared. Is that right? Is that gonna fire? Just make sure I've set that to 180. There we go. So we've now got going at it a normal radar, active radar, and a 1 pixel infrared, and we can see by their tracking, well, the 1 pixel actually ended up going into the water because it couldn't get a detection to pull it in. The radar the normal infrared this time has picked it up. That one missed. And obviously, as I say, we've got no flares, so flares would help to reduce it. It's having a problem at times targeting it. If that was moving around as well, I think that would give it some problems. Let's turn those two off. So next we've got a radar targeting missile. That's still some of the infrareds. Let's just let the radar one come through. So some of these infrareds are definitely not really catching on to it very easily, which is good. And the radar, near the end, it just about managed to catch it, detect it. But looks at the beginning, it's definitely having a problem. That one actually went into the water. It's definitely having some problems trying to lock onto the target. See if this next one is any better. Potentially, maybe if this was going low near the water, then missiles may go into the water because they target too low. So I think low level could be good for this, potentially. Certainly at range. Okay, so radar is detecting it, but having some problems. Right, we'll turn that off. And then finally, we've got this is a computer guided. So this is terminally guided by the guidance program from and using the trackers, etc., of the home ship. Now it has actually just started turning sideways. And that did end up hitting. I think we've got some good detection at the moment. That's at 100%, and the radar, no, just that. So okay, it has got some good detectability. Let me just see if I can change the angle a little bit. That one missed. Certainly not 100%. I can't actually change the angle that it's held at with this, but yeah, they are still missing. Especially if it's a small target like this, which is interesting. Okay, I think that is enough testing for the moment. Base results then of stealth. Stealth doesn't really work, let's put it that way, because visual cameras are very powerful. Night has a bit of an effect, and weather has a bit of effect, but they seem to be, once locked on, these tracking cameras just are there's no way to block or change them. Personally, I think night should affect these more. An infrared camera shouldn't be affected by night, or you need to have a different version of a camera that has, which is like forward-looking infrared type of camera, which is what I think these were intended to be, so that they don't have as good a night vision. Just to give them, because then you could create a script or use a control block to say at night come in close, and that during the daytime stay away, as an example. The type of material you use for your ship will have an effect, but it's all about the most important thing at the moment seems to be cross section. So the smaller you make your cross section, the more difficult it is to see. Things that I think would be nice is if slopes had an effect. So because in real world the sloping, radar works when you're pointed straight at a surface. If you're looking at a oblique angle to a surface, it will tend to bounce off, and that's the whole premise of like the F-117 Nighthawk. It's purely based upon making the angled to reflect radar away from what was targeting it. Also used in the which big cruiser destroyer of the American fleet, and Type 26 frigates, and all the modern frigates have this sloped flat sides to specifically reflect radar signals up away from ships or surface vessels. Other one is rubber blocks. I wish there was some angles on that rather than relying on just having bloody blocks, which is bloody annoying, because then we could create a rubberized, effectively like a rubberized skin for that which we're trying to make stealthy. If there was something else that could camouflage, or I think visual sensors maybe increase the power of some of these other sensors, and the visual sensors potentially come down a little bit, so it's not 100%. If someone wants it to be 100%, they can just change that in the options and ignore it all. But otherwise, it'd be nice if there was another way. Anyway, I'm going to build some stealth ships and see actually how they operate and how they go, and compared to a non-stealth version. So I'm going to create a ship and create two versions of it. One will be the stealth version and one will be the non-stealth, and we'll compare them up and see how they go. That's it for this episode though. I think I've covered all of the items I wanted to cover, and we've looked at the stealth and had a look at what I think it could work and how it could be improved. But overall, it's worth thinking about making your cross section of your ship smaller. I will look at subs, because subs are slightly different in that the only way really of detecting a sub underwater is sonar. So we haven't got this visual camera ultimate spotting facility. It all relies on sonar, and most of it is the same in that rubber absorbs sonar, and it's down to the cross section, so the cross section of rubber. But the problem in subs, which I'll go into in the sub one, is rubber's very buoyant, so it's difficult to make the ship stay underwater. So it's you got pluses and minuses for this. Anyway, any comments, anything you think I've missed, or any particular items that you think could be more stealthy that I haven't found, or I'm missing something, please leave a comment down below. Discussion's always good. You may not agree or disagree, but hey, that's always why it's called a discussion. But until next time, as always, keep playing the game and have fun.